Long ago, the people of Israel were still in the wilderness. They had been rescued from slavery in Egypt and were learning how to live as God's covenant people. God had given them laws not to burden them, but to shape their identity and teach them holiness. One of the clearest commands God gave was about the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a day set apart, a day of rest, a sign of trust, and a reminder that Israel depended on God, not on constant labor. God had said plainly, "On the Sabbath day, you shall not do any work." A man is found working. One Sabbath day, while the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man was found gathering sticks. This may sound small, but in that moment it was serious. Everyone knew the command. Everyone knew the Sabbath law. Yet this man chose to work anyway. We are not told his name, his tribe, his reason. Scripture stays silent because the focus is not on who he was, but on what his action meant. Gathering sticks was a deliberate act of labor, not an accident. The people are unsure. The people did not immediately punish the man. Instead, they brought him to Moses, Aaron, and the whole community. They placed him under guard because, though the law clearly forbade Sabbath work, they had not yet been shown what the punishment should be in this specific case. This shows something important. Israel did not act in anger or haste. They waited for God's direction, God's judgment. The Lord spoke directly to Moses and said, "The man must die. The entire assembly must stone him outside the camp." This judgment shocked the people, but it was not sudden or random. Just before this story, God had explained the difference between unintentional sin and defiant sign. This man's act was not ignorance. It was open rebellion, a refusal to honor God's command. The sentence is carried out. The whole community took the man outside the camp, just as the Lord commanded. There, they stoned him to death. The people obeyed the Lord's word exactly. The story ends abruptly, without commentary, without explanation, without comfort. Why was the punishment so severe? This story can be difficult to understand, but it carries deep meaning. 1. The Sabbath was a sign of the covenant. Breaking it publicly was rejecting God's authority. 2. This was defiant disobedience, not a mistake. The man knowingly ignored God's command. 3. God was teaching a new nation holiness. Israel was learning that God's laws were not optional. 4. Disobedience affects the whole community. That is why the whole assembly was involved. The message of the story. This account reminds us that God takes his word seriously. Obedience is not selective. Small actions can reveal big attitudes of the heart. The man was not punished because sticks were important, but because God's command was. Final reflection. The wilderness was not just a journey of miles, it was a journey of obedience. This story warns us. Disobedience is not measured by the size of the act, but by the posture of the heart. God was forming a people who would honor him not only when it was easy, but when it required trust.